What's up? Yeah.
Oh,
Makeup
friendly
day on a
face.
hump day. Make up my
Oh,
flubbed last week's malappearance. I'm telling you, what the world?
are
Mm.
you beating yourself up over there?
You know what? I'm here now because of all the constant hard on myself, not letting things go. Because you can always improve if you just, if you that a moment that you sit there and say, "Well, it'll be all right," and not take into consideration, what can be done to do better and how you can, grow as yourself, then you will never get anywhere. And
That's a good point. I like starting this way because you know we aren't. This is one of the stupid. It's one of the stupidest phrases. You're not getting any younger, right? One of those self-evident phrases. Not getting any younger,
yeah,
but you know, people tend to get set in their ways and think I'm old and can't teach an old dog new tricks, stuff like that. Those kind of phrases that have entered the vernacular. But the fact is, we are still right at the very beginning of eternal life, right?
no, yeah. Even at our last dying breath, that is our actually the most beginning we can even start at. Well, dude. Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Right? It's like you may think you're old, you may think you know some stuff and teach these youngins. It's like you've barely just begun. What you know is a drop in an ocean, and what lies ahead is so exciting. And so, I don't know. That's a nice little tangent to start off with. Good to see you, William. I'm glad.
Yeah, great to see you.
The reason I was looking forward to last Friday, if you were able to make it, and it's fine that you didn't. I can handle this on my own. As sometimes I need to, but I don't get to see you as often or I don't get to talk to you as often as I would like. And so here we go. All right.
Here we
So
go.
I handed it off to you to pick the topic, and here we are, Howard Stern. I'm going to let
Yeah.
you kind of vamp first to set this up and
Okay, and
get
it's
this
neat
going.
that you it's neat that you went on the subject of growth and awareness and are starting in life and how insignificant this is to kind of really plays right into what we're talking about here. And we can go into the whole transmission side of things, but we're going to stay away from that. What we're going to talk about is people's obliviousness, their hubrisness, their they're thinking of one way and it should be that way and no other way, and how people can change from one minute to the next. And we're talking about Howard Stern's response to the Kid Rock's response to the whole Bud Light thing. And I'm sure we know what that is. All right.
Yep.
For whatever reason Kid Rock is against Bud Light, it doesn't matter. He feels a certain way, right?
Yeah.
And feelings usually can come from an invalidated place or a validated place. But either way, those feelings do matter, and they need to be looked at and looked into and assessed so that you can reflect personally and see where you stand and where, if can I grow? Does this person, does he know something I don't? And Howard Stern has been a staunch advocate for being an individual, be who you are, don't conform. And if you see something wrong, say something about it, because that one movie he came out with in the 90s was just all about how he was sticking it to the radio stations who didn't want to let him be who he was, and or say what he wanted to say or express what he wanted to feel, because there's so many instances where he spoke out against things. And I guess to a certain extent here we are, but the things he are speaking out against is the actually establishment that he didn't shield for. He said, something's wrong with this whole establishment.
Mm.
And what do you think? How do people get to that point in life where they've, obviously been in the public eye for so long and been around a lot of things? How do they get so sheltered and so shelled into where they can't actually, see the outside thought? What do you think? Because you're a Hollywood guy, and you're Howard Stern. I mean, this should be, you know anything about this? How's this happen?
Those are the first things were crossing my mind in meditating a little bit on Howard Stern. Is it is a something that happens to people when they become successful or when they become, popular or famous, etc. And, just real quick, the history of my knowledge of Howard Stern, I always, for a long time, I didn't know who he was. And then because I did listen to Rush Limbaugh quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that era, Rush Limbaugh was number one and Howard Stern was number two. Like Rush Limbaugh was hugely number one, as far as a radio personality, a voice, kind of counterculture, etc. And Howard Stern fit into that mold as well. Counterculture. He was more on the left side of counterculture, and Rush Limbaugh was on the right side of counterculture, right? And but Howard Stern, I don't know what the ratio was, but Rush Limbaugh's audience is probably like 10 times the size of Howard Stern's, but Howard Stern was the next big dog, right? So he had a huge audience and has maintained that and has gone on and just branched out and been hosts on other things, America's Got Talent, stuff like that. But when you rise in status and are surrounded, essentially the people that are around you are paid to say yes, right? You get surrounded by yes men, and it's not even something, it's not conscious. It's just a kind of a feature of the process, right? If you rise, people want to get close to you to get paid or to have influence or whatever, and so their opinions are colored. And so it's almost like, unless you have a lifelong friend who calls you on your BS sitting next to you all the time, you're going to tend to believe in your own point of view, right? You're going to that's the hubris thing. You're going to tend to believe that you're right, whether you're a Christian or not. Even Christians are like, well, since I'm so popular and my ministry is so famous, maybe God has blessed me. And there's plenty of Christians out there with the same problem, thinking they're doing the will of God when it's really just some, crazy ideas, rather. Anyway, so one of the examples of this in media and Hollywood that I kind of tend to go to when we talk about things like this, George Lucas. So George Lucas was one of those renegade filmmakers, one of those up and comers, bucking the system, right? And like the studio, going against the studio's wishes or pushing the studio past what they were.
Star Trek, but Star Wars. Star Wars. Yeah. Matt,
you're one of them. You're one of them. Star Trek, Star Wars. I don't know.
Matt would be like,
but he was kind of a anti-establishment liberal kind of guy, George Lucas, and against the big corporations, right? We're fighting the man. And
that's
now
kind of what the premise of Star Wars was, kind of like, if you think about it.
Right. He was the Luke Skywalker coming in against the big, and now he is the corporation. Right now, I mean, Disney owns him now, right? Everything that he did. And it's like this thing, you get super famous and you lose your roots. And you cater to the zeitgeist of your bubble, right? They're in a bubble. And Howard Stern, I know producer Gina mentioned, at least in the notes prior to this, she's saying maybe Howard Stern has some contract. When you're at Howard Stern's level, you have business agreements with lots of people.
A lot of people, yes, exactly.
You're hired, you have sponsors, you have this and that, you have contracts that you have to be beholden to. And so maybe there's lawyers in your ear all the time.
In some of these contracts, excuse me, friend, I was kind of interjecting a little bit. In some of these contracts, when it's too good to be true, it probably is. And I also want to take 1 second just to wave a hand at Eureka and Denise and Jacqueline and Blues Clue. You guys are great in the comment section.
And Gillespie here. Is that Dennis or Denise?
Dennis. Yeah, Denise. I don't know. Dennis or Denise?
I
Help
think
us out with some phonetics spelling in like the dictionary. Put the little things and the lines over it. So
does the female name Denise have an E at the end? This might be Dennis. Hello, Gillespie from Aloha. From Hawaii.
Thank you. We're not going to assume gender today. We're just going to be nice and neutral. But anyways, so you see these contracts that are just, they're awesome. Wow, they're going to pay me all this money to do this. And, and lo and behold, would you not know, like, say, for instance, if I was a huge company, let's just say I might have some plans later on down the future, I'm going to need you. And you're not going to know I'm going to need, here, sign this really cool contract. Yes, we're going to pay you good because you're Howard Stern. And then here comes the moment when all of a sudden they say, yeah, you need to promote this. That too good, that money, that real nice, easy money, that kind of like, I speak against easy money, easy women, easy everything usually doesn't stay around very long, or it has something that you're going to be stuck to that's going to suck. You're going to hate it at the end of the day. And but go ahead. I'm sorry to mess you up, but that was.
No, actually, that I want to go on that tangent as well. We'll get back to what we're talking about here in a second. But that temptation to compromise or to take the money and modify, or once you take money from someone, you're now permanently associated with them and obligated to them to a certain extent. You're signing a contract, and that contract requires you to do something. For example, one of our buddies, Doug Tenaple, his channel, he's back in the mix, and his livelihood, he's making money on YouTube, and that's a good thing. And I'm grateful that YouTube let him back, but he's now getting sponsorships. And so he has to read these ads. And so he's required, right? It's like, now you've signed a contract. You're not free to do what you want when you want. Like it's minimal, but it's something you have to do, and all, like Ben Shapiro does it, and Steve Turley does it. They get these sponsors, and for little guys like you and I, some think, oh man, I'd love to be big enough to get a sponsor, and then I'd have, bread and butter money coming in. And I've thought about that long and hard. And I'm like, I think I'm at the place where I'm not taking sponsors, right? I think I'm like, if I were to be offered a sponsorship, it's like, I don't care if it's, selling Bibles, right? Some Bible distributor. I'm like, I don't know that I want to permanently affiliate myself with some business out there, because I have a business, right? And so I'm not saying it's wrong to do it, but I'm saying it definitely changes your autonomy, right? You are now beholden to another, and if it's worth it to some, it's worth it. I'm not at that place where it would be worth it to me. I do have a day job right now. But sponsors make Lucas mentioned sponsors make a person cancelable. It's like it's like, how do you know? For example, all right, we're on YouTube here. Are we still able to say the phrase red pill, or the federal, or is the federal government now going to scan through hundreds of billions of posts that have come out for the last 10, 20 years, right? Since the government has now made those words, put those in their FBI investigations, people using that kind of terminology, like starting to investigate them. It's like, wait a minute. And retroactively, like, a month from now, some video that I have the word red pill in the title or something, right? It's like, and then maybe some sponsor that you associated with at some point, they get canceled and you're associated with them. And then, right, all of this trickle down. I mean, we shouldn't walk around on eggshells and be afraid, but because God is in control. But as far as that taking money and becoming beholden to someone else, it's like, the selling your soul, idea.
So I'm going to take a little bit of that in that you just said. To engineer or drive a society in a certain way, you don't have to control an individual, but you can get somebody who has an audience or some sort of influence, and you can control them. And like with the tubes, you've got to watch what you say, and you can't get your full message out. And then society watches what you put out, and that's the message they receive, and that's where they operate at. They never can operate at the level they needed to be because they never got to hear the whole message. Thus, you actually made a small change or a slight engineer into that society, and you did it all. You didn't have to go to each individual person and tell them to be a certain way. All they had to do was just know a certain thing, then they would think a certain way. And I sad to say, but us out here in the tube world actually get caught up in that because we started all this because of something that happened in the 2020s, anyways. And so, and here we are now to stay relevant so that we can actually produce some kind of message. We're actually having to go a certain way, which in a sense, I hate to say it, is going to take our audience in a direction that isn't the most efficient way of fixing the problem. But we have to work with what we got. So forgive us, folks. But what I'm getting at is there's the evils, and even talks about that in the Bible. I can't name the verse, but the evils of money and greed, and answering to somebody can be seem so insignificant to where you're like, yeah, it's okay, so I can buy a lot of stuff with that money, but you don't realize the path that it can take you down. And yeah.
There's the verse that comes to mind. It's not specifically what you're referring to, but another verse comes to mind. And again, it's in, I think, Psalms somewhere, somewhere in the Psalms. David says, don't make me rich and don't make me poor. Right. It's like, he says, don't make me rich so that I would turn from you, O Lord. Right. In other words, there's an inherent corruptibility in prosperity, in wealth accumulation. There's an inherent corruptibility. And that phrase, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, which I actually disagree with. Yes, power has the tendency to corrupt, but absolute power, there's only one person who has absolute power. That's Jesus Christ, and he's not corrupt, right? So
Right.
that the extension of it, so that's an aside. But when David says, don't make me rich so that I won't turn from you, and don't make me poor so that I won't dishonor you by stealing, right? Or having to rob and steal. And so that, it's like, oh, yeah, it's not that either of those are evil in and of themselves. It's not that being poor is God's judgment. It's not that being rich is God's blessing. It's God has a path for you, and the wealth just has its foibles. It's pitfalls. And I believe on that. I believe every one of us is going to be materially abundantly wealthy beyond all our imagination, right? I believe that, like, think of the Jetsons and how easy they have it, even technologically, on this earth. I think that's something that's, something like that is God's plan, for all humankind. I believe every person is going to experience absolute, utter opulence, but that's in God's timing, right? Because the scripture says, every knee shall bow, every tongue confess, and then the earth and everything in it belongs to the Lord. So I believe wealth is what God wants, and that will eliminate the socioeconomic classes. It will all rise in God's economy. That's yet to come. That's a hope. But God has us here now for a reason. And let's get back to Howard Stern.
Yeah, but it just really ties in, though, because this is how we can see one individual that's bending right now, or has bent, and it's just a really good example. So, but yeah, with Howard Stern, yeah.
Well, so he's ridiculing some other rich, famous person for a decision they made. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's why Gina was saying she suspects maybe, it's a possibility Howard Stern has a contract with Bud Light. Who knows? But certainly, who is it? Travis Tritt? No, who is it?
Well, Kid Rock is the one that did the beer.
Kid Rock did that one, and then there's another
Travis Tritt, and then you have the guy from Big and Rich. I can't remember the guy's name. He's that I didn't see that one coming.
So canceling Anheuser-Busch because of an ad campaign that Anheuser-Busch. So we've got these people rising to power, and so there's the new marketing chief at Anheuser-Busch says this is a declining brand, right? That the marketing executive over at the Bud Light executive, she's like, I was hired. This is a declining brand. My job is to turn that around. Now, a declining brand, to turn around a declining brand, it's almost like impossible, right? And so this is like the marketing campaign that they launched into was totally ill-advised, and I guess you might say desperation, right? She's like, what can I do to turn this brand around to get the numbers going up? Now, for example, I work for a TV show that you would say is a declining brand, right? So they would argue it's a declining brand because it's been on the air for a long, long time, and the ratings over that time just gradually diminish over time.
The Simpsons.
Part of that, that's not who I work for.
I know.
I do have a friend. I have a friend that works for them. It's worked for them forever. But here's the thing: there are other factors involved in a declining brand. For example, when it comes to a TV show that's been on the air just because the ratings are going down. This is a show that'll never get canceled, by the way. I mean literally canceled. I don't mean in the way we mean cancellation, but it won't go off the air. It's just a tried and true brand, but the ratings have been on the gradual decline. Well, media has changed, right? That's just your normal TV ratings for people that watch TV the way they used to. This same show now has a digital presence, right? It's now being consumed on YouTube or being consumed in other methods. And so, they haven't caught up with the ratings. It's like, okay, the standard ratings may be in decline, but these ratings are on the uptick. And I'm saying all this to say, to look at a product and say it's declining and you got to turn it around. Yeah, that's what every executive's trying to do if they see that their product is on the decline. But this executive, this elitist, Harvard, she went to a couple of the most expensive colleges and then, gets put in this position. And she's got her finger up to the winds, of culture.
Brown stuff all over her finger too. It's
like, talk about an ill-advised, pulling the trigger on an ill-advised advertising campaign. You've got a caricature, right? This person that's in these ads. I mean, there's arguments that person's not legit, like that the things that they are purporting or proclaiming that they're it's a grift. That if you everybody knows who we're talking about. If that character, it's one gear. It's always a one note. Whenever the camera's on, it's like go, and this and this and this and this, and act this way and act this way, and it's like nobody on the planet is one note. Nobody on the planet is one dimensional, which tells me it's an act, right? It is a grift. And look at the money that person is raking in, and now has met with the president of the United States. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's a huge joke, pulling the wool over culture's eyes. And it's short-lived. We certainly know that now, since the backlash this is the biggest backlash I've ever seen, as far as I know. I mean, have you ever seen anything like this?
No. But I have a theory behind some of this, and this could be totally lefty fieldy.
John Rich, thanks, Carrie. Carrie mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. Here we are headed into a almost strategic decline in our economy. That looks like there'll be some kind of buy up of corporate assets to be able to figure out who gets money where, and ESG scores come in. And so there's a lot of companies that know that right now the economy crashes, we're all going under, and there's no actual to be able to be competitive in ESG scores. There isn't an actual standard that they go by. They just kind of say you need to have this inclusivity, which is actually really exclusive. But anyhow,
good points.
Yeah, and so what happens is now is you've got companies that seem like, they know that something's going to happen. They know that things going under, but if I can just get the highest ESG score, then maybe I'll be watched out for it. So as much as this seems like an accident that was just because of incompetency, could have been that, but it could have been somebody higher up saying, I have a pretty good feeling this person will do that, and that'll be fine. We're going to really tank hard. But whenever the stuff goes down, we'll be looked out for on the ESG side of things to say that we signaled the most, and maybe that's going to be their saving grace. Possibly. Does that sound possible?
I think you're on to it. And I did read some of that this, it's not that it was this particular executive acting, unilaterally, right? This is not something that this executive says, I'm doing this, we're doing this. It was a corporate decision that they made based on the ESG score. Absolutely. They're like, oh, we won't have to do any more of this stuff in any of our other products. If we just do this one, our score will be high enough that we can do business as normal in every other, all of our other marketing campaigns. Let's do this one. That'll do it. Get it out of the way. Little did they anticipate.
It happened too fast.
How huge, right? How huge.
Yeah.
This particular product, this particular audience or consumer base. It's like, yeah, you struck a nerve that you didn't realize was such an important nerve, right, at the core of our culture. Because it's not partisan, right? Yeah. It is not partisan. It's beer drinkers, period.
Yeah, a lot. And what it was, they probably figured, well, we'll lose some sales and we'll hear some flack, but it'll be okay because it's beer. And I think that it was going to be a strategic sort of fluctuation, but it didn't. I think it happened just like this whole thing with the economy. Yes, they wanted to tank it by design, possibly, maybe, but it happened so fast that they're having to do damage control because they haven't got all their affairs in line yet. And they're like, wait a minute, we're not ready for that to go down. So you're looking at a lot of backflips by administrations and CEOs to try to figure out where to backpedal at so that they can find that place to level off so they can still be ESG. But like anything that anybody does, if somebody does something, somebody's going to do it better. So now is there going to be a company that knows that things are going to go downhill that is going to completely top this some kind of which way?
Good
Something
question.
to look for. Yeah.
Well, I think we tend to think there's a what's the term? There's an actual term, a unified force that is making decisions, but it's groups or it's individual decisions that they play with each other, but it's not all intended. For example, is the tanking of the U.S. economy intentional? Well, certainly by the CCP spies that are in high positions of power or influence in our country. Absolutely. Right. The tanking of the U.S. economy is absolutely an agenda of our enemies. But as far as the dupes in high positions of power and authority, it's making a buck, right? Because they look at the CCP as an audience base, right? The single biggest consumer base on the planet. Let's listen to what they have to say, right? And so it's being duped by dollars, right? Being duped by dollars. But as far as will we see something like this, another one? Well, here's my question. The Bud Light thing is, I don't know if it's an anomaly or because this same character, there's not the same backlash against Nike, right? So Nike has a different customer base than Budweiser. It overlaps, but it's specifically
this is a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Right, the Bud Light audience is a very specific base that they stumbled on. They do not like this. Bud Light has not posted on any of their social media for the past 10 days. They were posting once or twice a day on all of their platforms. They had a huge tournament like the women's NCAA basketball championship. They didn't post during that whole thing, right? All of these huge events that Bud Light is a big sponsor of, they've gone radio silent on all of their social media. They know inside this is huge. This was a misstep.
Yeah, because like if they were to do a thing like the WNBA, they'd be the people in the comment section be like, I don't even want to say it, but they'd be just that comment section would be exploded with a whole bunch of comments, and so they can't even do anything with that. And then what's funny is now they're oppressing the WNBA. That's why I like the contract. I think to a certain extent, could they be sued for that?
Well, what's interesting, we're seeing the crumble, and this is I don't know who the philosopher is. I should probably look this up and get the name, but I hear teachers that I listen to, influencers, preachers, that there's a phrase that says anything that can't go on forever won't. Anything that can't go on forever won't. And wokeism and leftism can't go on forever because they eat each other, right?
Yeah.
That great president Barack Obama used the phrase circular firing squad, that's exactly what he's in, a circular firing squad. The left has shot at him even, right? Yeah. It's like the trans are shooting at the feminists, right? And the women's rights. This is an opposition, an absolutely inherent conflict that cannot be overcome, and so it'll crumble, and we're watching it collapse.
Yeah, that's where we don't need to result in any kind of kinetic thing. What we need to do is just sit back, stay out of the way, let the box just fall in on itself. Some
military leader said, when your enemy is destroying themselves, don't interfere.
Just leave it alone, let it roll. Yeah, because that keeps them guessing too. Because now they're like, what are we going to do? Well, we've got 40 seconds left in our neat broadcast, and it's been an honor to have all you wonderful people here, and you too, Michael. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all for being here. And William, we need to do this. Let's maybe do it regular. We'll talk off air.
I think we could work out a Wednesday where we could have it hang out, because this is great
monthly. Great combo. It goes so fast. All right, love you, William. Good to see you. Love you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.
Peace out, y'all.